George, last year we tried getting you into the 2009 Hall of Fame, and you didn't make the final cut. So Sandy said to me this year, what can we do to get George in? So when the ballots were sent out, we took a picture of Sandy and put it next to your name. So if you think you're getting on your accolades, I think it's because of your beautiful wife. George started racing in 1960 at the old Norwood Arena in the sportsman division. And quite frankly, he really wasn't that good. But in 1965, he won his first feature. And then in 1970, he won the sportsman NASCAR, the old sportsman NASCAR division, and that qualified him for the Permitex 300 race down in Daytona. So George was starting to get it together. In 71 to 74, he drove Bobby Melnick's Bush car, the old Bush series up north. And then in 75, the famous Vega wagon came out, the Pete Hamilton Vega wagon. And George was a household name. I mean, he was winning on Friday nights at Westboro Speedway, then going down to Seekonk and winning the bounties that were placed on him. He was just winning. And he carried that all the way through to 1979. And then in the 80s, he tried driving the Mellow Yellow Pinto. And when the cost of modified racing started to escalate, George decided to go Pro 4 racing. Back again with C.J. Robinson, they bought a Pro 4 from Broly Lindblad, and it took George a little time to figure it out, and then he literally owned the Pro 4 division to the day he retired. Picking up championships at Riverside Park, Thompson Speedway, New Smyrna Speedway, and of course countless Pro 4 division titles. He won his last race in 2001 when he hung up his helmet for the very last time, but that was quite a weekend because on Friday when they were testing at the World Series, the car blew their only engine. And the crew worked all night. They had to get the engine builder out of a bar room to open up and bore an engine, and they put it back together with used pistons and used rings, and George said, this is never gonna work, this is never gonna work. But the crew, they stuck by him, they said, just get in the car and go. They made it back to Thompson for the 5 o'clock. George got in the car, started dead last, and within 5 laps he was leading, and he had won his final race. It was kind of sad to see George hang up his helmet, but as we all know, everybody has to retire sooner or later. George is also winning ways have carried over in his personal life. He's owner of George's Auto Body, Premier Auto Body Shop in Needham. And he also has 4 wonderful children. Then, of course, Richard is still carrying on the Savary name, racing unmodified today, all around New England. George and Sandy can be seen at all the local racetracks and local car shows. They still participate, and you see them all over, and people coming up to them, talking to them about those famous rides, the Vega wagon and the Pro 4 division. So at this time, would you please give a big round of applause for the winningest driver ever to come out of Gasoline Alley in Needham, Mr. George Savary.
I think some of the accomplishments are going a lot easier than this. First of all, I've got to thank Mark Alden for taking all the time he did to help get me in this thing, which I never thought I would be. This is an accomplishment far beyond anything. Anybody that's got in here today or been in here in the past, it just doesn't get any better than this. And it's guys like Mark Alden, that takes his time all the board members are that donate their time to care about what we've done. There's just not enough words to say what you really would say. It's in your heart. It's just not there. I'm beside myself. I never, in my longest dream, ever would have believed I'd be here. I was just so proud to have raced with, walked with, talked to car owners, mechanics, and some of the drivers that, still want to talk to me. The likes of Mike Murphy, I'm more than proud. I've raced with him for years and did it with his wife for years. Pete Fiandaca, little guy, accomplished more than most people will ever accomplish in their lifetime, and is still a great, great person. I've met a lot of nice people. I got a lot of help from a lot of race car drivers. From the start of my career, when I met Donnie McTavish, when I was just a kid, and we were working together, and he introduced me to this sport. Good, bad, or indifferent, it turned out well. It was a passion. I had the fortune to have his mechanic and car owner come with me back then and decide, hey, maybe we could do this. Well, after a couple of years, it didn't look like we were going to do this. It looked like we were doing everything but the right thing. And all of a sudden, it started to come together. And this fella, Dick Bowen, stuck with me, still with me. And that's been the biggest part of my career, is how my friends and car owners, C.J. Robertson, I only had a couple. Most of them, my family, Richard, Buddy, accomplished race car drivers in their own. My son Danny takes care of my business, my daughter, and of course my wife, who's always supported me, and my kids. Never could understand why, and I still don't. But the fellows that stayed with me for years, Ed Catozzi over here, he was with me with the bag of wagon, Paulie Susie, J.C. I had Ronnie Williams, who's no longer with us, and I know he'd be here, and he'd be very proud to be here. All the guys I race with, I can't mention enough names because I know I'd leave somebody out, but someone like Leo Cleary, who was my idol when I was a kid. Believe it or not, Leo, I am a little younger, not much, but he was the person that took the time when I was a youngster, when I thought everybody was crashing me, and I guess I was doing most of it, to straighten me out. And I could never understand why he did it. And kind of a funny story I got is, I knew a fellow that he drove for, Bernie Burrows. His number 2 car at Norwood Arena, and Leo was a killer, as he was right to the last day he drove a race car. He gave me a body for a car, and I was just, wow, this is gonna be the greatest thing that's ever happened. Well, I had no place to build a car, so I decided I'm gonna build this thing on myself. So I cut this car in half, the body. I bring it in a couple, 3 pieces. I cut a chassis up, because it would only fit through the little garage door. Get this car all done, and my plan was to take the car apart. We'll put it together outside. Well, that didn't materialize because we had it painted, leaded, running, and a water meter man came down one day. I was down solo working on the car, and he looked around and said, you know, I don't want to seem stupid or anything. He said, but, you know, how the hell did you get that thing in here, or how are you going to get it out of here? And at that point in time, I didn't have that answer, but I knew I had to come up with something quick because the season was going to start. So I called on a friend of mine, Paul Susie, who's in the contractor business. He talked to his dad. Get your father down here, blow a hole in the back of my house, see if I get my car out of here. His father looked at it and said, this man's out of his mind. He can't do this. This is a supporting wall in the house. And I go, well, it's coming out one way or the other. So I'll go back to Dick Bowen. We went down, we were partners in a rock business at a gas station at the time. Young, not too bright. And we rented a couple of electric jackhammers. And a whole bunch of sledgehammers, which we broke a bunch of. And we must have spent, I'm gonna guess, I'd have to ask Dick, we must have spent 2 weeks drilling holes in the foundation and beating it out with a sledgehammer until we got the car so it could go out the door. We were all excited about this. We're finally letting this car out of the box. Right outside my garage, I didn't pay too much. There was a septic system there. We never really paid a lot of attention to this guy. Out the door I go. Needless to say, with all that extra time, you know, we really went over this car close, except for the brakes. I go out the door and I landed on the septic system and took the top off it. So it was kind of a real smelly situation to get this car back in the garage again. And the neighbors were wondering what the hell this thing was that just grew out of the back of my house. And then there was the guys like Leo that got me on the straight line, got the car to work well, and we started very successful. And I asked Leo one day, why you help me? What's the game? He always he looks at me and he says, you know, I come up behind you, you're always going sideways, you're going the wrong way. He said, I don't want to think about passing you, I just want to go by you. He says, anytime you got to think about going by somebody, you're not going by. And he was so right. I learned so much from that man, words can't describe it. And I've learned a lot from everybody. You know, I mean, Georgie Summers, one of the greatest guys I ever raised in my life. Gentleman George, I'm not quite sure what that was all about. Maybe someday we can sit down and straighten that deal out. But other than that, all I can say is I couldn't be any more proud to have my name alongside all the people that was put in today and all the people that are here and on the Hall of Fame. I am just short for words, and I gotta thank my wife. Thank you.